trade paperback, flocking to the
I am joined by the amazing Allison O'Toole, Dan Price, Andre Owen, Fred Kennedy, Chip Zdarsky. Chip, thanks for coming. What's up, folks? I'm your host, Conrad, on Wednesday Night Reviews, and tonight we're joined by Dave Swartz, and we're going to talk about their new book, Confederate Monster. Dave, thanks so much for taking the time.
Hey, thanks for having me, Conrad. Appreciate it.
Absolutely happy to help. Always spread fun, different, interesting books. So just an easy question just to get started for the folks out there who've maybe never seen your face, who've maybe never heard your name. Who is Dave Swartz?
Sure. So I, like most of the kind of guests I'm sure that you have on your show, independent comic book creator. I've been doing this for about 10 years now. Used to be a creative director at a marketing company, but man, I just really didn't like the work and the clientele. So I decided, I'm going to just do something that I loved. So, like I said, I've been doing this about 10 years. I started out doing self-publishing. I switched into doing some stuff for, publishers and other collaborators and writers. And right now, I've basically just been a pencil for hire, working with other writers to, create their books. And now I'm finally coming back around to self-publishing another series called Confederate Monster.
I love it. And you know what? Next easy question. What is Confederate Monster?
Sure. So Confederate Monster is basically Cowboy Frankenstein in the Civil War. So we basically take the same literary characters that we're all familiar with from the Mary Shelley story, but we revisit them 8 years later after the original monster was reanimated. And we follow the main character is Igor, but he is in hiding in Confederate Virginia as Dr. Daniel Schmidt, basically just helping soldiers that come back from war to give them new prosthetic limbs for their amputated appendages. So, but the Confederacy finds out about his dark past and rather gruesomely convince him to reanimate their dead army.
All right. Now that is a hell of an elevator pitch. One thing I was curious about sort of right off the bat, the moment I sort of started looking into you a little bit, is this is a fourth issue. Now, the campaign, as people can see, is for 1 through 4. But there's been from what I understand, a considerable gap between 3 and 4. What happened? What are you comfortable telling? Why the gap? For all the fans out there of yours who were like, "Oh my God, I want the 4th."
Sure.
What's going on?
Sure. So basically, Confederate Monster was my 2020 project, essentially. So when everybody went into lockdown and we were getting hella checks from the government, I decided, hey, I think this is the universe's, message that maybe I should tackle another self-published story. So I went back to what I had kind of, pulled together for pitches earlier in my career. And I pulled this one out because I thought it really had some legs to it. I thought I could really maybe reinvigorate the story and re-establish a better art style for it, because the original art style, in my opinion, just wasn't right for it. So I spent all of 2020 getting as far as I could in the series. And then I landed on issue 3. And at that point, I started sharing it with other friends of mine, collaborators. And almost every one of them told me and was really pushing me to do a crowdfunder. And so I did a crowdfunder for issues 1 through 3 on Indiegogo in 2021. And, I think it did pretty well. But after 2021, I kind of hit some snags in my career, and I really needed to just focus on, making money. Most illustrators, from what I understand, have day jobs and they kind of do comics on the side. And for me, like, I really just wanted to do comics full time. And again, 10 years ago, I quit my full-time job to do this. So really, in my mind, I don't really have a backup plan. I just need to make this work. And so I decided, I need to pour everything into, getting work and finishing work. And in ways, I was a little too focused on that. And so my wife thankfully. She came to me about, I think, like this time last year, and I was just kind of bummed that I wasn't able to really work much on my own projects anymore. And she said, well, why don't you just take a day, like take one day out of the week and just do more Confederate Monster. So at first I was a little begrudging. I was like, oh man, I don't know if I can afford to like take one day off of work. And she said, no, you can't afford not to. So you need to do something for yourself, for your own creative kind of soul. So I listened to her wise words, and I've been working slowly on issue 4 since last winter, and
Nice.
now I'm ready to put it out there, and I'm super happy to continue the series and finish it up.
I love it, and yes, those are absolutely wonderfully wise words. If anyone out there listening, watching, whether now or in the future, if you can absolutely block yourself off time to be creative, because then amazing books or other things like Confederate Monster will get made.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Now, I guess my next question is, this is created by Dave Swartz.
Mm-hmm.
So you're doing art, writing, all of it, correct?
Yep. Lettering, graphic design. I designed the logo. I promote the book. I market the book. I do everything for this project. So, and frankly, I tend to sort of want to do a lot of stuff myself anyways. I actually find it hard when I do projects for other people that come to me and they only want me to draw it. I
Oh.
almost convince them to let me color it, because I don't know, I have a complex about doing the coloring for my own work. But I think a lot of that too is just the process that I have.
Hmm.
I would like to admit that I work really fast, and that's not really me boasting. It's just the reality. Most of my projects that I work on, I mean, I do usually a 24-page book, both drawing and coloring, in under a month.
Woo! You are
Yeah.
steamrolling through. I love it.
Right. So, but again, it's part my style. I designed a style for myself that's not going to take me 1.5 million years to finish a page. I can understand that like some artists out there, they just honestly they can't devote a ton of time to things because again they have day jobs. So for me, I wanted to be able to streamline my process so that I could not only get things done faster, but really create an effective product in a simple way.
Okay, so now I've got to ask. So the illustrations we have up here of the various characters and some people being absolutely destroyed. Um, when you said what you just said, you've made a streamlined way. My brain thinks tone down the art, go less detailed, so that you can get it out faster, right? Like my brain goes to something like Jeff Lemire, Jay Stevens, who's sort
Mm-hmm.
of a cartoony look to it,
Mm-hmm.
or something like that. And yet, that's not the case. So, what in your art process would you say is pared down, streamlined? However you've done it, how can you get it out that quick?
So, I think for me, a lot of it is repetition and being able to, break everything down into simple shapes.
Hmm.
I'm also a teacher, so I teach
Oh.
part time at my alma mater here in Detroit. So I teach drawing and design. And one of the things that I really harp on with my students in both classes really is understanding your shapes. And I know that sounds like so kindergarten, but it's so important for any illustrator to be able to understand not only how to create a volume within your drawing so that it looks real,
Hmm.
but doing it in a quick and simple way so that you can add those details faster. You don't have to really work at it as much because you have a good roadmap to kind of draw over top of. And
Yeah.
typically, I draw layouts really quickly just to get the basic concept down. And then I do my pencils very loosely over top of that, and I'm really not trying to keep them super sacred, right? I really want to kind of
Hmm.
draw through things and not slow down too much. I want to keep my fast pace. But again, that also keeps the energy of the drawing, so that when I get to the inking stage, it still feels like it has that energy, that life to it.
Yeah. Interesting. Like it's funny you mentioned that because another show I do with Keith Gratchow called Sketchy Goodness, where basically as a talentless hack who just likes to talk to people and a very long, well careered designer and comic book creator, um, the idea comes up a lot of the fact that I love the lie that is art, right? Like you're inherently with this, you are drawing a 2D thing. That's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
But like you mentioned, you're being able to quickly and easily add volume, add depth, all that kind of stuff, which is the lie part, which I love.
Right.
Um, so I highly appreciate that, and I think that when it comes to your art style, you and Keith operate similarly, because he as well basically thumbnails everything and then just sort of builds off of that and lets it keep its energy.
Right.
Um, so if that is anything for viewers of my show, my other Sketchy Goodness, my other show, to be able to say the art in this book, from what I've seen and from the way that you're mentally describing it, uh, it's going to have a lot of movement to it, a lot of energy, which is exciting because there's nothing worse than a comic that has these really cool poses that feel like statues.
Yes, and honestly, I think for my style too, because my style is very linear. I tend to do a lot of hard lines, not a ton of curved lines. I mean, I do some curved lines when it comes to like hair and fabrics, but I have a very chiseled jaw kind of style. I even go in there and just really try to make things look more geometric. And
Mm-hmm.
that's sort of born out of the way that I just apply line. A lot of artists will be very kind of slow and controlled, as they apply their line, or some even kind of feather it, is what we call it.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah.
yeah, and for me, I like things that have like a nice sort of clean, kind of quality to it, without any kind of jaggedness within the line. So I tend to kind of just sweep my lines. I tend to go very quickly. And so if I draw a line and I don't like it, I undo that and try it again. And I keep doing that until, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's like artist intuition or what it is, but like there's something in my mind that just goes, yes, yes, that's it, or no, no, try that again. So yeah.
I love it. I mean, I think that is a fantastic way to do the art because there is, I think for beginner artists and artists that aren't established or haven't been doing art regularly for a long time, they end up with the issue where they are too precious about it and they just, oh, it's not perfect. Oh, it's not perfect. Oh, it's not, and it's like, just stop, just go. Like,
Yeah.
just get it out. Like, because there's nothing worse than having all that the stuff in your head and not being able to get it on paper
Mhm.
because oh, it's not perfect. Oh, um,
Yeah, don't get in your own way.
yeah, exactly. Perfect. Well, you know what, Dave? We're right about the time when I like to ask about the campaign. So, from the sounds of it, because it's a one-man show, and I believe just to confirm, you do this all digitally.
Yes, yes, I do.
Perfect. So that gives you a lot of flexibility. Now,
Mhm.
one, the campaign currently in Canadian sits at $2,474 of a goal of 4,103, which I believe is what, 3,750 US?
3,000.
Oh,
Um,
just 3,000. Oh,
yep, yep,
Canadian dollar's fallen even further.
yep.
Um,
So right now I'm just over that halfway mark. In American it's like 1,800 something right
nice.
now. Yeah.
With 22 days to go, so one, congratulations.
Thank
Um,
you. Thank you.
yeah. So what I wanted to ask was, can you I guess a couple things. So firstly, what state is Confederate Monster number 4 currently in? Is it just scripted? Is it half drawn? Is it a quarter drawn? Is it fully done? Where is it at?
So I would say I have about almost I think it's a little bit more than half of the coloring left to do. And so all the drawing is done.
Awesome.
Everything is ready to get colored. Obviously I colored the first few pages because you can see them there on the campaign. But like I said, I've got a little bit more than half left to go. And I have full confidence I'll be able to finish that up by the end of the month. I'm actually about to transition into, like I said, I'm a teacher, so I do summer school camps, and so I'm gonna start doing a summer school camp here pretty soon. And part of what I do in that summer school camp is, even though I'm teaching my students, about character design and environment design and concept art, um, I'm working on this book or whatever project that I would normally be working on while I'm in the class with them, so that
Yes.
they can get a sense of what I'm doing as my day job, and ask me questions, and I can actually use my projects as examples for my instruction. So it's nice that I can kind of double dip in that way, teach and draw at the same time. But yeah.
Well, one, thank you for doing that. Truly, from all the art classes I've been in, thanks to high school and all the previous grades, as well as just when I've observed other classes, they always, oh, let's do a drawing of X, Y, and Z, and there's never like a live example of what a paid artist looks like.
Mhm.
So for you to be able to go, cool, so like if we're drawing digitally, show screen and here's literally your page, what you're going to want to look for is, here's how you add volume, here's how you do shading, here's how you get shape.
Right.
um so thank you for doing that, because I am sure that it enriches your students in a way that they don't realize. I'm sure that you might not even realize it because you're just like, I'm just doing what I do. um
Yeah.
but I'm sure being able to see it live is fascinating.
Totally.
um Yeah. So the fact that the book is almost already done is amazing. Like you said, it'll be the rest of the month and you'll be good.
Oh yeah.
Um, so the campaign itself is 22 days left. Again, people can find it by simply Googling Confederate Monster number 1 through 4, Kickstarter Confederate Monster, or any combination therein. But yeah, what I wanted to ask was, can you go over for us the different tiers for it, as well as what they include? That way people know what they're getting into.
Oh, sure. So, I really wanted to just sort of put together a more streamlined campaign this time around. When I did Indiegogo for the last couple of issues, I really, I sort of did myself a little bit of a disservice by literally just giving stuff away and adding a ton of extra rewards. And as much
Oh,
as that's
okay.
like super cool, and I think a lot of the fans really enjoyed some of the creativity that I put into it. It's just a massive undertaking to just do it all myself, and I understood that from my first experience. So I think with this one, I wanted to kind of just pare it down, focus on really just the book, maybe some other swag options. So you get there's a digital option for those who just want a digital copy of the book. There's physical options. There's a cover that I did as cover A. That's sort of the primary. And then there is a cover B that has the print that's done by Christian and Simon. Those guys are phenomenal together, powerhouse team there. And so, I wanted to do like a little variant version so you can get a cover B, which features that print of theirs. Um,
Very cool.
yeah, and then you can do some catch-up tiers. So I have a sale for both the catch-up. There's a digital catch-up and a physical catch-up. So with the digital catch-up, you get all the copies of Confederate Monster. That includes issue 0. Issue 0 is actually a prequel short story that's self-contained, and it tells the story of how we got to where we are from the original Mary Shelley story.
Oh, cool.
So it basically starts right after the monster has been reanimated and bursts out into the world. And Igor and Victor have to chase after him and subdue him. So it's a bloody rampage. There's all kinds of action and large splash sequences in that book. It's all done in black and white too, which is pretty cool. And it has
Nice little callback.
it has like a Tales of the Crypt like cover to it as well. So that was pretty cool. And then there's a featured bundle there that has a copy of the book. It has a print with the Christian and Simon variant. It has a sticker and a button. So it's just sort of a little bit of everything if you want to, get a little bit of Confederate Monster swag. Um, and then I also have some other tiers that include that would be that I think right there is the physical catch up. So you can get all the copies in physical. Again, I have a sale going for that, so jump on that sale. It's a really good price. And then after that, I've got a library of work of mine. So I've got all the Confederate Monster issues, as well as issue 1 of Vampire Detective in Space, which is a series I did with Caleb Palmquist. If anybody's familiar with Caleb's work, he's phenomenal. And then I also have an issue 1 of another series called Bloodsmith that I did with Morgan Quaid. Both of those books are really well done, really well written as well. And so you can get those, as well as one of my previous books in a trade collected edition called Feast or Famine. That was my first published book. And that's basically my sci-fi story. It's like Nikola Tesla and Albert Einstein partner together and go on a space adventure.
Absolutely wild sounding, and what a deal. Like, I love when someone's been at this game for a long time, and as a result of that, you get to have just this insane bundle that in a regular comic store would probably run you 100 or more bucks, and
Right.
you're able to give it to at a much better rate, and get fresh new comics that are interesting, different. And yeah, I appreciate the variety that you're allowing people to access with these, either the digital library of your own work or even just the catch-up tiers. That way they can
Yeah.
get everything all in one little shot. That's amazing. I did notice we've got some commission tiers.
Yeah.
What's
So
going on there?
I have one commission option there. So if you guys want to get a commission from me, you can get a commission of any character that you want. Do just a little bit of like a headshot, sort of like a portrait kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's done in black and white. It's an original commission, so it's not digital, just so that, make sure that you will get a physical drawing from me. So again, if you want a commission, but you don't want necessarily that tier, you want maybe the digital catch up, or you want something like a physical catch up. All the different items that you see there are all available in the add-ons. So you can kind of build your own bundle in that way.
I love it. Fantastic. So again, just to sort of reiterate, for the folks who've got the previous 3 issues, if they only want a digital copy, it'll run them $6 US, 9 Canadian. A physical copy with the standard cover, 12 US, 17 Canadian. And then if, like myself, you're totally new to this, digital catch-up tiers 25 US, 35 Canadian. And then the physical catch-up is 40 US, 55 Canadian. And that's 5 comics, not 4. Fantastic. Now, each of them, this issue is 20 pages. Are each of them 20 as well?
I'm glad you asked that question, Conrad, because I was just about to interject and just mention that issue 1 is actually a double issue. So it is a close to 40 pages. And I've had a couple questions about that. And the real reason I decided to do that is because I'm an avid TV watcher. I really enjoy just the medium of television in its modern incarnation, in the sense that a lot of TV shows nowadays, they're like 10-hour movies. So
basically,
right, and so I enjoy that with many releases of new shows. They'll give you like the first 2 to 3 episodes to really get you hooked and dive into it. And so I wanted to sort of emulate that with how I did this, where the first issue is a little longer than you expect. So you get an opportunity to really get invested in the characters, invested in the story. And then the last issue, issue 6, which, I probably will be able to get to sometime next year, will be, again, another double issue, so that the ending really feels like, you get a nice payoff for your investment.
I love it. So all in all, as you've mentioned now, it's 6, technically 7 was in issue 0. I guess if the first and the sixth are going to be 40 pages,
Hmm.
it's going to be what? No.
It's like a
20,
little
80.
over like 160, I think, something like
Yeah, like that is a chunky boy. I
that.
love
Hmm.
it, especially for what is essentially 6 or 7 issues.
Yep.
Um, so one of the things that I am curious about, because the setting is interesting. The character itself of Frankenstein's monster, the ability to bring back the dead or create life from various places and parts and people.
Hmm.
Uh, Very well known. Mary Shelley creating the original sci-fi story with Frankenstein. Um, a lot within the last couple of years, a lot of different comic creators have touched on this character. Things like Frankenstein Unchained and things like that
Hmm.
from previous guests on the show.
Hmm.
But everyone tends to take the character in really different, interesting ways, or the scenario even. Um, Whether they're, Frankenstein's monster has now been alive for a couple hundred years and he's sort of in our future and he's pissed off about it and he's trying to just make his world right for him.
Hmm.
Whether it's, set in a modern way and it's just them trying to figure out modern life.
Hmm.
um, Dave, what is one Igor, and thank you for saying it correctly. What is Igor up to? How are they finding themselves in the Confederacy? Um, and sort of what's the situation that Igor and if I'm not mistaken, the original monster getting themselves into?
Yeah, so in issue zero, like I said, it sort of is a story that bridges the gap between the original Mary Shelley story and where we're going to begin in Confederate Monster. And, in that book, we see the aftermath of what happens to both Victor and Igor. Now, Victor is thrown, and this is, I mean, I wouldn't say spoiler. It's kind of spoiler-y in a way, but it's pretty evident from some of the artwork that I've been sharing and some of the things I've been saying in my promotion that Victor is captured and he is thrown into an asylum. So for the last 8 years, he's been in an insane asylum. So he is
Good times.
absolutely out of his mind. Biting the heads off of rats and just like being all emaciated, and he speaks in like limericks and just gibberish. It's really fun actually to be able to kind of play with the character and do different things that really quite haven't been done. So that's what happened to Victor with Igor. Igor, you know, is able, because in my story he's not necessarily a servant to Victor's master, right? That's
Hmm.
typically the relationship between the two characters. In this story, it's much more of a like father son or teacher protege, kind of relationship. So Igor
Okay.
is very much like a true, almost carbon copy of Victor. He's trying to and he's grown up with Victor. He's been with Victor since he was a teenager. So, he really wants to just show Victor that he can be, just as smart as he can. He is just as able and capable as he is. And so, when Victor, gets taken away, he's kind of left with his own devices. So he uses his wits in order to, create a new identity for himself and travel across the pond to America, where he can lay low and kind of reestablish himself within high society as a
Hmm.
as a doctor. And so he, has this new bride, and they have this beautiful life together. But again, he still is, holding on to this dark past, this mysterious, side of him. And the Confederacy finds out somehow about that, and the rest is to be told.
Perfect. Well, thank you for priming that. Again, one of the things that I like to do for anyone who's thinking about getting into a Kickstarter who maybe has never done one and they're like, oh, what if I don't get the book or whatever? That's why I ask the questions like how much of the book is completed, when do you think it'll be done, all that kind of stuff. And when it comes to something like your story where the first 3 issues have already been out, issue zero has been out, and someone's trying to hop on, having that kind of context I think is perfect. It's also an interesting take on the characters, on what they have been going through. um, one thing I'm curious about is Frankenstein's monster. So the original monster, many people just know it as Frankenstein, but the monster.
Hmm.
Uh, it's been a long time since I've read the book, but if I'm not mistaken, at the end of that book, um, it's not that he or it dies, but it kind of wanders off. If I'm not mistaken, I may be wrong, so correct me if I'm not.
Yep.
Um, but from the sounds of it, that thing is off in Europe doing whatever it's doing in a cave,
Hmm.
philosophizing, being depressed at life. Um, and as you've mentioned, somehow in this story, uh, it gets found out that Igor kind of maybe knows how to create this, and the Confederacy would like that power behind them.
Hmm.
Um, Something that I was interested in personally was when it comes to the story that you're creating. Um, Obviously, the Confederacy within the states, within sort of world history, is widely talked about. People have very strong feelings on it, about honoring their heritage and where they came from and their forefathers who might have fought on either side of that war.
Yep.
And it could be a rather spicy topic. Um,
Oh, to say the least, yeah.
yeah, when it comes to putting these characters in that area in that time, is there anything that you wanted to be able to explore in Confederate Monster through them? um and philosophically, I guess, what can readers expect?
Sure, that's a great question. So, I think, one of the things that I really enjoyed about being able to set it within a historically accurate time period, and to be able to use some historically accurate, figures, right? Because I do use a couple of Confederate generals within the book as my
Cool.
surrogate sort of villain, characters. And they are, I mean, one of the main guys that you can see in the book is General Nathan Bedford Forrest. That guy was in real life a vile person. I mean, he was the first Grand Dragon of the KKK.
Oh, jeez.
I could not have chosen a better villain, honestly, to represent the Confederacy. And so, in researching the book, as much as I, wanted to use the Confederacy as my villain, I do have to, be cognizant of the sensitivities. So I have to just be aware of, how I portray the characters, how I portray the Confederate imagery, things like that. So,
Hmm.
I pared down the use of the Confederate flag because I didn't want to put it in every page. I think that would be a little much. But, I personally feel like we should be able to explore true villains in stories without being able to, or without being told you can't, right?
Hmm.
Um, because, in my opinion, like there are so many stories that talk about, real life villains like Nazis and Hitler and all that sort
I
of
was
stuff.
just gonna say, yeah.
Right. But the thing about it that I found is, we have a hard time in the States with the Civil War because it's close to home, right? That was like literally like the calls coming from within the house type situation, right?
Well.
So, I think we have an easier time when the villain is, not us. But when the villain is actually us, that's where it becomes a little murky. But, I think in that way, I would encourage people to, use it as a way of healing, of seeing,
Hmm.
this is our past, we can't ignore it. Um, but really, in my opinion, um, a lot of people have judged the book not just by its cover, but by its title. And really, if you're going to judge a book by its cover, I mean, I feel like that's kind of what got us into the Civil War in the first place. You know what I mean? So
Woo, yeah.
why can we not do that? So why can't we just see past some of those things, maybe see it for what it actually is, give it a chance, and maybe we might learn something. And that's part of what I wanted to do with the book. And it's actually part of the reason why I stuck with the title. Because I
Hmm.
must say I had quite a lot of people when I put out the first few books a couple years ago. When I was trying to get book shows and get people to support it, a lot of people scoffed at it and just said, "Well, it has to do with the Confederacy. I don't want anything to do with it." And I was like,
Interesting.
well, open the book and maybe read it, and then that would like clearly put your fears at ease, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think in that experience, I had an opportunity to change it, but I thought, you know what? I think there is another story really to be told here, and it's not to judge a book by its cover or its title, and see it for what it really is.
Interesting. Like it's one thing where for me personally, like being someone who like I'm Canadian, so I'm outside of the States. It's obviously one of the largest powers in the world in the modern context. You can't not, you know, understand your country's relation to the States and all that. So we get a lot of this stuff about the wars and all that.
Hmm.
Um, but like one thing that I've always consistently, and even when Canada sends troops places, that I've always been for myself consistently weary of is like I don't love the military, but I support the soldiers, just maybe not the people sending them places. Um, and it's one thing that I find to be a great conflict because as someone who loves a lot of video games or TV and movies where there are very big shows of military, SWAT, all that kind of stuff,
Hmm.
where they're always typically heroes, it's like there's more nuance and context to all that. But
Right.
yeah, but as per your story, I guess what I found interesting was just the fact that you said it in such a spicy time
Hmm.
that is so divisive,
Hmm.
especially with sort of everything that's gone in the last couple of years.
Hmm.
But I like that because, like you said, we should be able to talk about these things,
Hmm.
and it's a part of the history.
Hmm.
Um, Now, how much time we got? 40 minutes in. Why not? I want to make sure I don't take too long, and I want to get to some fun stuff about you because everything
Sure.
going on in your room is fascinating to me right now. Um, when it comes to the book, I guess one thing that is within the I need to pop this back up on screen so people could see it. Give me just a moment to get where I want to get to. Come on, there we go. So I'm gonna pop this up. I had it up earlier, but here is Daniel Schmidt or Igor, uh,
Hmm.
one Victor Frankenstein having an absolutely horrible day. Uh, the monster, the bride. Um, you mentioned earlier the Confederacy sort of learns Igor can do maybe kind of what Victor or what Victor did. Um, I'm assuming you've been able to have fun and do some different characters, as you mentioned, like based on real people, but also the fictional, the fantastical, the monstrous.
Hmm.
Um, have you been able to create any characters and have fun with them that fit within the context of sort of the Mary Shelley characters or pop culture characters?
Um, I had a lot of fun. I would say sort of reimagining, some of the characters. Obviously, like I described before, Igor is a very different than. I mean, and honestly, Igor wasn't even in the Mary Shelley book. And for those of you who haven't actually read it, Igor was a character that was created largely, I believe, for the original movie.
I think
And
so.
I
Yeah.
don't even think he was referred to as Igor in the original movie. I'm actually kind of at a loss as to I can't remember now which pop culture incarnation kind of gave him that moniker. But I wanted to really take the characters in a new direction. So I don't necessarily think I kept anybody super true to the original Mary Shelley characterization, with maybe the exception of the monster in ways, but I really can't say much more about that because it would give way too much away. But yeah, the monster has a very mysterious sort of past, and I'll just leave it at that. But anyway, but yeah, again, I think because I was so inspired to reimagine it, I think that's why I
Yeah.
wanted to make sure each character was slightly different, so that you felt like they were familiar, but at the same time fresh.
Right on. Well, I absolutely think readers are going to enjoy this. a heck of a lot. And again, for the folks out there, one, go ahead and pop up Google and look up Confederate Monster 1 through 4, Confederate Monster, Kickstarter Confederate Monster, anything within that, you'll find it. Back it now, and basically for 40-ish bucks, you can get all of the copies, all 5 books, 20 pages a piece, except the first, which is 40, including the fourth, which will be coming out quite soon. Um, Igor originally was for the first film. You were correct. Very nicely done.
Thank you.
Now, as mentioned earlier, we've got about 19 minutes left. I have to ask about the room. So you're in, I believe, either a blue light or I think it's actually a black light. And
a little bit.
yeah, you've got behind you what I believe to be some wild-looking paintings.
Mm-hmm.
So Dale, I got to ask, as an artist, what's going on behind you? Talk about it a little bit.
Yeah. So, I'm trying to remember now when it was. I think I want to say like probably around the same time that I was doing the original Confederate Monster books. I got into abstract painting. I'm not entirely sure, what inspired me, but I just wanted to, start experimenting with different forms of creativity. And one of the things that I had never really quite tried yet was abstraction, because almost my entire career, or my artistic practice at that time, was largely very driven by illustration and just making sure that everything that I was doing was more or less within that wheelhouse, right? Everything was tight,
Fair, yeah.
clean, and even with a comic, you have to. There's a script, right? So I have to do it in a certain way, and I have to make sure that everything matches up with what the writer's expectation is. But with abstract painting, it's quite literally just throw paint down and see what paint does, and kind of allow the paint to sort of inform what my next move is. So I don't have a plan. That's the thing. It's the opposite of what I do for my day job, where everything's planned out to a T. Every panel has like a description. Whereas again, with the abstract painting, I can just go nuts and see what happens. And so like you could see like, ooh, I got like a whole rack behind me.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's not even like, I should show you my house one time. It's literally covered. I created what looks like wallpaper in my house, but it's just paintings. And I just literally butted them all up next to one another. And so you like walk in and literally every wall just looks like it's covered in paintings.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was my wife, genius. I was only starting off with like, traditional, like one painting per wall kind of thing. And she, was like, you have so many, why don't you just cover all the walls? Like don't leave an inch, spared. And I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. So about a million command strips later, I got them all up there, and, it looks pretty cool. And I got, I think we almost primarily use Christmas lights as our lighting at night. We got Christmas lights in every room, like even my bathroom and my kitchen have Christmas lights like hanging up in there. So, and then right now, I was just telling another a podcaster the other day that my project right now is I was looking at I have this bookshelf, a very tall bookshelf in my dining room, and I was looking at it the other day, and I was going, I think I could turn that into a tree. And so I just created this plan to like use the bookshelf as my structure, and I'm building a chicken wire kind of frame around it right now.
Oh, cool.
And, I'm going to use pool noodles as my basis for the branches. And then I'm going to use cardboard, just like ripped up pieces of cardboard for the bark. And I'm just going to cover the whole thing in bark or cardboard and see what happens. I don't know. I've never done it before. So I'm hopeful it'll all work out the way I envision it. But I'm a big proponent of broadening your creative approach. I also play music, so I think, It's an important thing for any creative, and this is something believe it or not, I got from John Lithgow, the actor.
Oh.
Yeah, I watched a video one time, and he was talking about how he does art. He like sculpts and paints and draws and does all kinds of creative stuff. But for him, he uses that as another method of getting his creative flow going. That's different than acting, and he thinks that one helps to inform the other, and I completely agree.
Interesting. I mean, I like it, and one thing I think that, as you mentioned, is good for creatives, but it's good for anyone. I think is just allow yourself that time to try to be bad at things. One, don't worry about being good at it; just be bad at it and just do it
Yes.
anyway.
Yep.
But I love that you're letting yourself do, because yeah, there's so much in this world that is. I had this thought the other day that just sort of popped into my head where I'm like, we are such a highly educated peoples now, like anyone in like a first world nation, that I often think that we overestimate how hard things are or how much education you need to be able to do a thing, where it's
Mhm.
just like you can just do a thing, and you can be bad at it, but like do it.
I lost I think it was 4 drill bits in the wood as I was like constructing this because I have a buddy of mine. Ooh, someone's shooting off fireworks already. Anyway, I went to a buddy of mine who is a woodworker, and
Nice.
he basically has just a giant pile of scrap wood.
Oh, cool.
He
Okay.
builds like tables and stuff for people. He does those really cool like resin tables where he like gets these giant pieces of like redwood and just fills the crack with like a blue
Oh,
resin or something. Yeah, he's really talented. So anyway, he has this giant bin of scrap wood all the time, and I had, like I said, this idea for the tree, and in my mind, I'm thinking, I need to build a nice wood frame to then put the chicken wire around. So I asked him, do you have like just some like right angled pieces for the base, so that they can kind of be like the roots of the tree? And he was
yeah.
like, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Come over and get them. So I grabbed him and I started working with him and not like realizing that this wood is like the densest wood I've ever seen in my life. And so like I'm trying to drill a hole through it, a pilot hole for my screw, and it just grabs onto the drill bit. So I think I
Oh,
lost
yeah.
like 4 drill bits trying to make this thing work. But it's in progress. I'm this close to starting the car tour. So
I love it. I mean, that's fascinating. I have a few questions, but first, one, when you're done this, or even if you're doing progress shots, if you're posting it online, your name or your handle here, at Dave Swartz Art, that is your Instagram. Do you also have X?
yep.
Where all can people find you?
Yep. So they can find me on X or Twitter, whatever the heck it wants to be called now. And Facebook is sort of my primary go-to for
Okay,
the comic
cool.
book side stuff. And then, you can find my website is daveswartzart.com. So really, if you just Google Dave Swartz Art, you should be able to find me. However, I will say there are actually 2 other Dave Swartz, exactly how it is spelled, who are both artists out there. Yeah, one of them is a fantastic mural artist. Like I saw it, I just found it the other day. I was blown away by his murals. It's just giant buildings that he's done
Wow.
beautiful illustrations. He does everything in spray paint. And then this other David Swartz who does like paintings, just like regular, acrylic painting. I actually had somebody just randomly reach out to me on Instagram and said, I think my grandpa or something has some of your paintings. He was an art collector and he just died, and we're going through his like house. And I'm like, there's absolutely no way that he has any of my paintings. And so they showed me some of the work, and I'm like, you've got the wrong Dave Swartz. Like, just not me at all. But it was interesting to find out that apparently the Dave Swartzes of the world are all artists. So I don't know, it's weird.
You've got a good name. That must be it.
I guess.
I mean, art is literally in your name.
That's true. And I recently figured that out. Not just a couple. I think like a couple years ago, I figured that out. It's like, oh, I got to put that in my logo now. So
Yeah. Awesome. So the questions I had for you, I must admit one or two of them have escaped my mind. Um, One of them that I did want to ask though is, given all the recent work you've been doing with, um, I'm gonna call it expressionist, and that's not it. The art that you've been making that is behind you,
so the abstract stuff.
abstract. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Well, it may not inform how you do your pencils and your inks when it comes to the shape of characters and things like that. I was wondering, have you noticed any impact on how you color when you're doing your coloring?
I would say in ways, yes. I think when I first started coloring, I was a bit more subdued in my saturation level. I was a little too afraid to go too overly saturated, and I think the more and more I play with color, I feel I have the confidence to kind of just push the envelope a bit more.
Right
And that actually goes not just into my coloring, but in the way that I do inking and the way I apply shadows and contrast to the drawing stage. When I first started out,
on.
I found that it was quite intimidating, to go in there and just block out a whole section of the character that's black. It just it really scared me because, when I first started, I was doing it all traditional. So when you throw down a ton of
Oh.
black, you can't go back.
Yeah, it's
Um,
done.
yeah. So, I think in ways that kind of intimidated me. And so now that I do largely digital work, I will say it's sort of invigorated me to try new things because I have the freedom to undo it and start over if I feel I need to. So, in that way, I think, like I said, all the different approaches to art help to inform, the other approaches, and everything just sort of rises at the same level.
I love it. Again, people out there, whether you're watching us now live or sometime in the future, don't be afraid to be bad. Try things, experiment, because you never know what you'll learn out of it. Even if you try things once and never go back to it, because maybe you don't like it, you don't know what you might take out of that and be able to apply to art, to music, to paintings, to construction, to carpentry.
Yeah,
Good luck with the tree, because that sounds sick.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Thank you.
yeah. Now we've got about 7 minutes left. So I'll wrap this up with sort of my two last questions I typically ask.
Okay.
Um, I'll give you a third actually, because I think you're very interesting, and with everything that you're into, I think you'll have a really cool answer. Um,
Okay.
so often I find people who create comics, they read comics,
Mhm.
and people who read comics, they tend to be nerds. Nerds like to collect stuff. So, uh, what is something in your collection, whatever it is, whether it's books, stamps, artifacts, paintbrushes, whatever?
Mhm.
What is the thing that maybe not the most expensive, maybe not the most valuable, but what's that thing that makes you the most happy when you get to see it?
Um, this is going to sound like a really bad answer, but when you were saying it, it's the first thing that popped in my mind. I collect trash.
Okay, all
um,
right.
so I'm going to clarify that. One of the things that I'm really conscious about is our impact on the world, on the environment. And so, I compost all of my food scrap. I usually, will try to reuse anything else that I don't want to throw into a landfill, or I feel like can't, in my opinion, throw into a landfill, like tons of plastics and things like that.
Right on.
So I have a box actually right here, and I have another bunch of boxes downstairs in my basement, where I collect plastics and discarded pieces of
Oh.
whatever that normal people would probably just throw in the trash, but I'm keeping because I'm really interested again in seeing how I can repurpose some of these things into
Oh.
art. One of my favorite things in painting is I developed this sort of technique where I take I was really pissed off about all the plastic bags that we use. like the shopping bags. And so I had just a ton of them, and I've since switched over to reusable bags because you couldn't do that during the pandemic. So I have all these plastic bags, so I started just tearing them apart and taking the pieces that I found and just hot gluing them to a canvas and sort of creating these like almost flower looking like shapes.
Oh.
And so then you just like throw a ton of abstract paint over top of it, and it winds up just looking like this weird alien bouquet of flowers, which is kind of weird. But that's like one example. I think for the tree idea, what I want to do is not just use cardboard, but use other, like old paper towel insert rolls and like,
right on, yeah.
And just try to incorporate that in there somewhere if I can, because I do plan on painting the whole thing when it's done. But even like something as simple as taking a canvas and literally just gluing random pieces of trash to it and then painting the whole thing one solid color, and it like turns into like a Star Wars wall or something because it looks all like techie and weird.
Yeah.
So again, like I tend to collect a lot of just discarded, otherwise known as trash items, to try to give them a new life, give them, something that you might not have necessarily expected.
Interesting. One, I love the strength and the vigor with which you believe in the recycle method.
Sometimes it's tough getting all those labels off all the paint, the painters and stuff.
I also highly appreciate working in what my partner, who's also an artist and a teacher, would say is a found object, because that's fascinating.
Yeah,
I look forward to seeing sort of what you do going forward with that and what you share, because that's super cool. Thank you for sharing that. That's why I love asking that question, because people come up with just the coolest stuff that they do.
Yeah.
Now, we got only a couple seconds left. Well, 2 minutes. So, Dave, real quick, when you're not teaching, when you're not drawing your own comic, creating insane art, functional, beautiful pieces of furniture, what is it that you're reading?
So I must say I'm a really bad reader, but I'm a lot better when it comes to like just I tend to collect comics to study more or less.
Okay.
So one of my big things is I'll go to the comic book store and I shop with my eyes. A lot of people shop with their eyes, and I typically will pick the books that I'm really just for whatever reason creatively drawn to. And it's a wide range of styles in books. And so, I tend to just sort of have a stack of books, next to my couch in here in my office, where I can just sort of take a break and sort of scroll through and just absorb, more and more visual information to store in my library, I will say one title that I have over here and I've been kind of perusing through for another book that I'm working on for my day job is Once and Future with Dan Mora. Just phenomenal work. I mean, the guy is just absolutely prolific as all hell. And I would say he's the epitome of what I would like to be as an artist, in the sense that I want to be as effective as I can visually, but do it as simply and do it in such a way where I don't lose the action and the motion. And he does such a good job of that, between the way he draws his figures, the way he lays his lines down, because they have a lot of energy, but then also just the perspective that he puts into his cinematic shots. It just pulls you in, and it makes the whole space like feel, real and just inspiring. So
100%. Like, you know what? It's funny you mentioned that. Dan Moore is one of my favorite artists. I have a copy of Once and Future #1 sitting right there.
Yeah, I see it.
I then also have, I don't know if it's on the wall. It's not right now. I came to him through the Claus or Klaus series.
Oh yeah, I love
Grant Morrison.
Oh.
So good. Yeah, like, so absolutely, he is truly one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And I find One thing that I like about asking creators what they're reading is that you get answers like that where a lot of people, I'm guilty of this as well, will do stuff for like, oh, I read Batman because I love Batman. Like me, I'm a diehard Batman and Detective are always on my pull list. I've got every issue since I started collecting
Sure.
or started reading. Um, but I love that you're just going in and being like, oh, I'm going to grab that because it looks good. This draws me to it and
Yeah.
study it.
Yeah.
And I hope that I hope that in your pursuit of that, you end up finding something that makes you feel as passionate as possible every time, and that teaches you a lot, man. Because I think you do some really cool work with Confederate Monster. I think your art in it is awesome. You have a distinctive style, and yeah, more of that is always welcome in my world.
Well, I appreciate that very much. Thank you so much.
For sure. Then my last and hopefully easy question, Dave, while my dogs get very mad in the other room, is going to be, who do you think we should have on the show next?
Oh, geez, that is a great question. You know, I am gonna. I know I can say his first name very well. His last name I am probably not even gonna attempt, uh, because well, he's from Brazil. So his name is Rodrigo. Again, I can't remember his last name enough to be able to even pronounce it, and I probably would butcher it even if I did. But in order to find him and the work that he does, he and I actually worked together on another book that you can find on Kickstarter right now. It's in its second issue. It's called "Don't Talk to the Dead," and basically, it's a book that's done with Mad Bug, and so we have been working on the series together for about I think about a year and a half. He does all of the pencils and the inks, and I do all the coloring. And I mean, the guy is just phenomenal. I really love his approach. He has a lot of Sean Gordon Murphy influence in his art, just the way he approaches his line. But this issue that we just finished, issue 2, is just chock full of amazing splash pages, double page spreads. Basically, the story is like the Goonies go to hell. So it's like these teenage kids play around with a Ouija board, and they accidentally summon this demon. This demon comes forth and rips one of their souls out, and then they have to travel to hell in order to get the soul back. So again, it's very fun. Lots of really great art. It's doing really well on Kickstarter. It's in its second issue. I think they got a couple more to go still.
Cool. All right.
I couldn't pitch it harder than that.
Awesome. Well, as I'm assuming I've got the correct one up here.
Yep.
Perfect. Well, their Canadian goal is just shy of $700. So I'm assuming they're asking for 500, and they've blown way past that. So they're doing great. So, firstly, folks watching live with us now and sometime within the next 22 days, go out, find Confederate Monster, back it. It's right here. Let's get this book made, get the 4th issue made, and then you can enjoy Dave's work. And then immediately after that, because Dave's recommended it, hop over and check out Don't Talk to the Dead number 1 and 2. With that, Dave, absolutely, I wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's been a great combo.
Glad to hear it. And for the folks at home, go back the book. Go now. You don't even have to finish the video. Just go. Like the video, though. That would be great. Comment what you think of Dave, his work, the previous issues, the story. Just try not to give spoilers. Subscribe to my channel for more awesome interviews. And as always, we will see you next time.
Golden age to present, digest to oversize. Never miss new comic day. Yeah, no surprise. So where's my no prize? Check the letter columns. Can't find issue.